So in this lesson, we're going to get started on sphere studies. It's a very important exercise because with this simple geometry, it helps us really understand how color, light, and shadow works. So let's get started. We're going to take a flat geometric shape and we're going to add form and light to get us warmed up for the actual character painting. So we're going to add form and light to make it look dimensional. I'm going to use this lowish hard round brush, so the one with the soft edge. I'm going to leave it at flow at 28. I'm going to have these two things turned on, and then we're going to use this elliptical marquee tool, and you're going to make sure that this is at 1 pixel. Anything more than 1 pixel is way too soft, and anything less just feels too stark. A 0 feels too stark. So now holding Alt and Shift down, it'll give us a perfect scale circle about that size. And again, don't feel that this has to be exactly the same way that mine is, but something similar if you want to follow along, but it doesn't have to be exact. Like you don't have to follow the exact color mix-up or anything. So now I'm going to fill this up, and I kind of want this to be a little warmer. This color here is your local color. And so what your local color is, the color of an object before it's influenced by light or shadow or anything else. So what is the actual color of that object before any light or anything else hits it? And now we're going to paint on top of it. So to paint on top of this, you could take the sphere layer, you could add a new layer on top, and holding Alt in between the two layers, you could create this clipping mask, and then you can say I want a warm light. So I'm going to add a little bit more red into that, and I'm going to go up higher. And now I'm adding some warm light to it. This will keep it within that shape. If you want to do like non-destructive painting, you can keep everything separate. For the sake of just moving quickly, I'm going to do something a little different. So I'm not going to use that. I'm going to turn this little guy on, and this locks all the pixels that you paint within that shape. If you don't want things locked in there, then you simply turn it off, and then you just have to know that it's going to go out of that shape, and then you can turn it back on and continue moving forward. So I'm going to use that just for the sake of time and moving a little quicker. So now that we know that we have that warm light, let me turn on these notes. The things that you want to think about as you get started. Here's your shape. You want to think about your light. Here I have warm light, cool shadows. What is the position of your light? For me, it's this top left and then slightly forward. So if you see the dimensionality of this arrow, you're seeing that the position of the light is not only top left, but it's also slightly forward in the camera, in the plane. This is the direction of the light. So it's my shadows should kind of fall, and my light should kind of fall on this object the same way, in that same direction. So these are all the things that you want to think about while you're painting your sphere. And so now I'm just blending all of this. Because for me, this light, it's pretty far away from the object. But you know what? I think right here, I think I've gotten a little too soft with that transition. I want you to be able to see the shadow clearly. I want to define that a little bit clearer. I'm using Alt to select from here and Alt to select from here. And so I'm just kind of like selecting from light and dark, and I keep going back and forth and blending those colors. We're gonna add a little bit of a fill light from this side, and that light I want to be cool. So we're gonna use this blue. We want it to somehow be somewhere around that same area. The lower down on this chart, the darker your color, the higher up, obviously the lighter. And those are your values. I want to sort of stay within that same, maybe a little bit lighter. So something like this here. I don't want it to be too bright, because this isn't like rim lighting. This isn't like that hard superhero light that you see, you know, hitting the side of a character's face. That's not what I'm trying to achieve here. I just want like some soft ambient like fill light that's hitting it on that side. I do want it to feel like a cool color versus warm. That's a nice contrast against this warm light. It's already starting to feel a little dimensional. Where these two colors meet, a lot of times is very saturated. All these little subtleties and shifts in color and shifts in warm and cool all create this dimensionality to it. Now you come down here and we're going to add something called occlusion. And so occlusion is something that's very important. It's the dark spaces that you see in between two objects. And so it's where those shadows are, where there's no light penetrating. So it's really, really dark, and that is what helps us kind of differentiate between two shapes. Now let's get back to the project here. There is no light hitting this area. And so that is like the darkest area of the image. That little crevice down there where there's barely any light creeping up in there. And then as you get up closer towards the object, it starts to kind of lighten up a little bit and blend into. You want to blend those colors in as you pull away from that really, really dark area. Just to give you an idea on how I approach this and the things, those little it's all subtlety. It's all about not having a heavy hand and going crazy, you know, it's all subtlety. Like this, I'm just trying to blend it out, but I don't want to lose the darkness at that very bottom edge. And then because I want this object to be sort of reflective, I'm going to pull this color, this gray color from the ground. I'm going to lighten it up just a little bit so that it shows up here. And very lightly, very subtle, I'm just going to hit the bottom left of this sphere with that color. The light is coming from up here. It's bouncing off the ground and hitting the sphere down here. And then now let's add a shadow underneath. I'm going to create another shape here, and I'm going to make it an oval like this. Now this isn't the accurate or correct direction for this shadow. But now I can use this, I can set it up under here. I can move my anchor point, pivot point to there where I want it. And now with distort, I can move this around. The shadow is going to get like tighter as it's closer to the object, but maybe a little wider, and eventually you'll see softer as it gets away from the object. So somewhere up here it'll get softer. And now I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to trap, I'm going to lock these pixels in here, and I'm actually going to pull this color, this gray, and now I'm going to paint in there to soften that edge. Then when you get in here, remember this occlusion area, this is going to be really dark. I almost never use complete black. I get really close to it, but I try not to just use like solid 100% black. And so see, now that you're under there, now I like to go back into the sphere, and now I do like to try to push that dark even more. So I make my brush really big like this, you know, and then really light, I just kind of too much. And then decrease the size and blend that in. Going really dark under there where there's no light. That adds even more dimensionality and realism. Maybe I add a little bit of color to this side of the shadow. What I like to do is I like to soften the shadow. So I'm going to turn off this lock pixels. I'm going to come here and use my blur tool, just the edge of that shadow. And there you have it. You know, that is a dimensional sphere. It looks very 3D. My light is actually a yellow light, so you're going to go almost white. Actually, what I do even before that is I'm going to select this color. I'm going to push it up just a little brighter. I'm going to add a little bit of yellow into it. And I'm just going to hit it very subtle, very, very subtle. And then I'm going to switch over to this rough edge brush. I'm going to leave all this the same. But I'm going to go back and make this almost white. And I'm going to hit it and create a specular highlight. And now that even feels a little bit more like a shiny kind of material. And that's it for the sphere. So that's it for the first one. Feel free to, again, use a lot of these tips. You don't have to use the same colors. You don't have to use the same light setup. But I do want you to consider what is the temperature of your light and what is the position. And then think about how it's going to affect the shadows, how soft this transition is, all those kinds of things. And try a few different things. Move that light around. It's the best way to practice, and try using some different colors. So now that we took a look at sphere studies and looking at color and shadows, we're going to jump into the next lesson, which is modifications of those simple geometry.